So it's mainly for this presentation, I wanted to give you an overall understanding of what ARCHES and its general capabilities. After this, Mahmoud and Junaid will give you an overview of more of the back end and how data is structured mainly in Arches. And also wanted to say that we're not going to have immediately a Q&A session after this. We're going to have after Mahmoud's session. But as the previous sessions, if you have any questions when we talk, you can also ask them in the chat box. So what is ARCHES? ARCHES is a web-based geospatial information software platform developed by the Getty Conservation Institute and World Monument Funds. It is an open source software, which means it's freely available, developed purposely, built for the inventory and management of cultural heritage data. When I said it's open source and freely available, I wanted also to mention that there are costs that also associated with the IT support for setup, for customization, for hosting and maintenance of software. But just to have it as is, it's open source and it's available to be downloaded for free. It is user-friendly and has a very easy-to-learn user interface designed for users mainly with no or limited knowledge of GIS. It can be customized. It's a flexible software that can be customized and extended and updated with new features based on your needs and which heritage community and IT specialists can help to do the customization. One of the main advantages of ARCHES for me personally, when I think of ARCHES, the attractiveness of the software is that it's based on, it's standard based and it incorporates internationally adopted standards to both promote data exchange and ensure longevity of data. And this is addressing a problem that have affected heritage fields for a long time, this lack of standardization in recording of heritage information, but also in the modeling and data structure, which could resulted in loss of data due to next generation technologies, and also a challenge of sharing information. ARCHES uses standards in data content part, in data recording and data fields, and it's mainly built and based on CIDOC International Core Data Standard for archaeological and architectural heritage. Here, this one, and also it's been extended and include Dublin Core Metadata Standard for archaeological fields. And also in developing data content for ARCHES, the developers had also the MAEASaM heritage from the UK in mind, and which gives a minimum level of information that needed to be recorded to record heritage assets and archaeological sites in the United Kingdom, and also covers a principle and basics of information that need to record for condition and record threats and to the sites and manage for the management of sites. For the data modeling and data structure, ARCHES uses an ontology called CIDOC Conceptual Reference Model, CIDOC CRM. It's an ontology for cultural heritage to model the relationships between data fields. And we will have more specific training and discussions with our partners and a specific group of people that we work with to develop ARCHES about all these ontologies and the behind scene of ARCHES. And Mahmoud also, I think, will talk about briefly ontologies in his presentation as well. It also incorporates standards in the technology and software sides. ARCHES employs open data standards published by Open Geospatial Consortium to support geospatial data interoperability. The main applications and uses of ArchES, as I said, it was developed for the heritage professionals and archaeologists to use it as an inventory and management tool. But also ArchES has been deployed for some other uses. Getty Conservation Institute for now is in developing ArchES for science that can be used for conservation science. And also it's been the ArchES software itself, it's been used for in areas such as asset management, oil spill response, monitoring groundwater quality, and etc. But its main uses, as it was built for archaeology and heritage data, it's been used by different institutions working with archaeology, either researchers or heritage manager. And that's by itself another advantage now after almost 7 years that ArchES has been running and deployed since ArchES 1 came out, is this growing community of archaeologists and people, professional people in our archaeology and heritage, using the software and making this community of people using the platform. Few examples. If you go to ArchES website, there are more examples of implementations of softwares. Here are only few of them. That deployed by different heritage institutions. The first one is the Historic Places LA. This is the first institution who used and implemented ArchES in 2015 to record historic resources of city of Los Angeles and make an inventory and make it also publicly accessible and available. Another example is EMINA EMINA project and database, Endangered Archaeology in the Middle East and North Africa, based in Oxford, Leicester, and Durham universities. They're using the database to record data that they've collected from remote sensing to record archaeology in MENA region, and also to add information about condition and threats to the sites. Another example from this country, from UK, is Arcade. An Arcade is an access resource for conservation and archaeology in a development environment. It was employed in 2018, is a publicly accessible for the inventory, map, describe, and help protect cultural heritage of the city of Lincoln in the UK. The two last examples I wanted to give is to kind of tell you slightly different uses of ArchES. Heritage Monitoring Scouts is based in Florida, and it's mainly for tracking changes to archaeological sites at risk, particularly those that are impacted by climate change. And the last one, Global Digital Heritage, I think it was implemented in 2019, is an example of the project who used the database who used this software for making a digital record of nearly 100 sites and artifacts in a format of 3D models, point cloud, geospatial information, and etc., freely available for users to see. Mainly ArchES capabilities are that from one side, ArchES can store data, so it can be used as a data repository, but it also can manage data. You can visualize data using the map function and visualize geospatial data, and also it allows users to do query, so do query based on the data that it's already in the database, and then you can export the result of your query in either shapefile to use it in QGIS or CSV to be able to do more complex analysis of your result. You can also publish data, and you can customize and generate reports that goes with your sites and monuments. It's a secure access. You have a secure access to the database. As I said, data can be openly accessible, but it's up to the users to what level of security they want to add to the system. You can, admin can define different level of users access from reading or viewing to creating and updating data, to also deleting information from the database. Once Arch is deployed, different information about site can be added. All the main information about types and chronology can be added, and also location and extent of the sites. You can add information about where the site is located and draw a geometry. So it can be a point, line, or geometry in 3 formats. You can add your coordinates, or you can use the UI, the user interface itself, to draw your the boundary of the sites and define the extent of the site. This was briefly, as one of the question and answer mentioned, this issue of the extent of the site and how the extent is defined. And that's, as my colleague Rebecca explained, it goes hand in hand with the methodology that each institution or each team is using in recording archaeology. But one thing that can be added as a data recording field in Arches or any other databases for that matter is to be able to record the certainty of the location and the certainty of the extent of the boundary of your site. You can view sites on different map layers once you're using the user interface on Arches. Other than freely available satellite imagery, you can also add historical map layers when they're georeferenced, of course, and you can see the location of your sites and changing map layers from freely available satellite imagery to historical maps that you've been adding to the system. You can also add different overlays for information about parcels and planning as well can be added to the system. Last thing I wanted to show about the information, oops, I'm sorry, this was here the whole time. About the information that you can add in Arches, is this is an example from the arcade system that you can add. This is from the report function. So after the information is entered into the database, you generate report, and this is what users or viewers without specific access to the database can see. So you can see your heritage, this milestone. I can add information about its name and any other information that is necessary for different organizations. And another thing that can be done and you can add information to is the information about significance, which in this case, that if we think that its milestone is from a Roman, that it gives the rare significance or uniqueness to this heritage resource, which is could be one of the 7 in the city, and having the condition of the record in mind, which is in poor condition, Arches can be used. That's why I said that Arches can be used as a management tool. So with knowing the significance, knowing what is this thing that you're recording and the condition of it, then decisions can be made when you want to prioritize any conservation or restoration activities. I want to also talk about the related resources in Arches. I talked about in my first presentation about archaeological data structure and different types of data and how it is important to model archaeological data explicitly to include all information about archaeology and not just the main information about what the site is located and any photos, drawings, and artifacts about the site, but also information about activities and people who've been involved in any specific sites or monuments. Arches would allow you to do that by defining by having different resource models built in the software itself, and you can also customize these resource models to add anything that you think is missing. This is from the version 5 demo version of Arches, and information about archaeological resources, group of resources, and heritage resources can be added, but also any activities, historical events, and people and organizations, and any information about information resources. And this is where you can add information, add photos or PDFs or reports. This is to show you an example of how, after adding this information inside, or data inside database, how relations are visually visualized in the database. This is again from the demo version of Arches version 5, an example in Egypt of Valley of the Queen. The Valley of the Queen as a group of, or as an area containing different archaeology and heritage inside, is recorded as a heritage resource group, is this square, and all the points that you see here are the individual sites that are recorded as points, in this case inside the Valley of the Queen, and these are all related to each other. So when you search, or when you look at the list of the sites in the database, you can see Valley of the Queen as one of your heritage resource groups, and all the tombs and other features are related to the parents, or to the group site. And also in this case there are images that are related to my site, but also we could add information about different people who did different excavations and study at the site, or different activities and events can also be added and visualized. And also you can kind of, when the live database is on, you can choose each one and go to that resource directly. Some possible use cases of Arches. As I said, it can be used mainly for site recording and inventory of archaeological information and their location. It can be also used for condition monitoring because of the capability of adding information about condition of the sites. It can be used for research and analysis, especially the advanced search functionality that the system has. And it could also be used for protection and planning of the site. And this is an example of how you can use the search function in the system to, if you have, let's say, a coordinates of the area that the construction is planned, you can add that and search for that area in the database, and you can define a buffer area, and the area that a buffer zone for this example is 250 foot, an area that you want to see if there are any archaeological sites that fall in this constructed planned area with the buffer, and how this construction will affect those sites, and how you can communicate this information with the planners and think about any mitigations to affect these sites. About preparing your data and Arches structure and few considerations. Different institutions who want to deploy Arches need to think about type of records and archaeological data they have, and or they want to record using the database. Decide on data and type of data need to be added and managed inside the system, and understand the requirements and needs, and think about use cases and application of Arches before starting to seeing if the resource models, or if any structure of the software needs to be modified or not. Come up about the use and the applications of. Thank you. So for a few consideration in preparing data to go into database, that different institutions need to think about their existing data structure and data organization and identify the best way to classify their archaeological or heritage records and model their archaeological information for and in arches. And that is things to think about how archaeology is defined in your, you want to define the archaeology, different levels of archaeological sites, whether you're recording heritage, built heritage information as well, how the features are defined and related to the site level. Determine whether existing data, your legacy data, will need to be imported into arches, and if so, plan and think about data cleaning and data organization that I mentioned in my first presentations. And as I said, Arches comes with a set of resource models and structures that already is built in, and with the data entry fields and the accessory as well, that Mahmoud and Junaid will talk about those things. But it is up to institution to see whether anything needs to be changed based on the previous consideration that I mentioned, or whether the system as is useful. So kind of there are customizations that needs to be made to the system in order to make it address your specific archaeological, heritage, geographic, and administrative context. And lastly, I wanted to mention before I hand over to Mahmoud that there are different ways that you can add your data inside Arches. One is to bulk upload your legacy data, and we will talk about all these in detail with specifically our partners and people that we work with, but to give you an overall idea that you can either bulk upload your legacy data with in the CSV format, and you can use the, after you have the database running and you're happy with the structure and everything, the user interface itself can be used to add information. And as I think Mahmoud mentioned this, that there is also an Arches Collector app that comes with the software that can be used as an offline mode in the field to collect data. And when you're online, it can be synced back to your instance of Arches. So now I'm handing over to Mahmoud, who is going to talk to you about how you are dealing with data when it's in Arches. So let's